Okay, welcome to this video on trig graphs and equations. We're going to look at the format of y equals a sin bx and y equals a cos bx. Now, you should have watched other videos before you get to this one. This is the third video, and the first video dealt with a, and the second video dealt with b. Now we put them together, and at National 5 level, you're expected to be able to write down the values for A and B based on giving a graph. And I've drawn a graph here, and it's a sine graph that I've drawn. And the question is, write down the equation of that graph that we've got there. Well, how do we go about it? Well, we just look at the videos we've done before, video 1 and video 2, and that will show you how to go about doing that. So let's try and find the equation. Well, the A here is called the amplitude of the wave, and that's the distance from the centre, or 0, up to the maximum value, and from the centre down to the minimum value. And you can see that the amplitude is from here. It's a basic sine graph, and the amplitude is 3. So that tells them that my A is 3. So we can write down y equals 3 sine. Now we have to work out the b value. Now remember from the previous video, b is the number of cycles in 360. So a sine graph normally has one cycle in 360. And if we look at it, 1, 2, we've got 2 cycles here. So that means that b is 2. So that's our equation. Y equals 3 sine 2x. Now, I'm going to just draw one very quickly out, just to give you ideas. These things are very, very easy. Now, let's go for one cycle. Now these are all meant to be the same, 2 cycles, 3 cycles. Let's go for 4 cycles there, and let's put, that's 360 degrees, so that's 0. And let's make the amplitude this time, let's make it 5 and minus 5. Well, to write down the equation of that graph, this one's a wee bit too high I think here, so let's just top that. Remember, these cycles are all meant to be the same, quite hard to draw. So, the equation for this time is y equals, well, the amplitude between 5 and minus 5, so the amplitude is from the centre up to the max value, so that's going to be 5, goes up to a maximum of 5, and it's going to be sine. Now let's look at the number of cycles. 1 to here, 2, 3, that's 4 cycles, so that's sine 4x, so that's y equals 5 sine 4x. Let's look at another one, a sort of a wee bit harder one here. Let's draw half a cycle, and let's say that's 360 degrees. Again, it's still sine, and let's put a value here of 4, and this is 0. So in the exam you're asked, write down the equation for this, representing this graph, knowing it's a sine graph. Well, let's look at it. Maximum value is 4, so that's going to be 4 sine. Now the number of cycles this time, we don't even have one full cycle in 360, we only have half a cycle, so that would be sine a half x, and that's your equation. Let's try a cos one this time. So put our axis in here. Remember, cos starts from here, and there's one cycle. Oh, not very good. Let's try again. There's one cycle, 2 cycles. These things are quite hard to draw. So 360 degrees, and let's make the value 3 this time, and this is 0. Well, from the shape of the graph, you should realise that it's a cos graph. I've told you that anyway. And the amplitude this time is 3. So our equation this time is y equals 3 cos. Right, number of cycles, well, cos starts here, 1, it repeats itself here, and then again 2. So we've got 2 cycles, so that'll be cos 2x. And that's our equation. Right, let's look at one that's a slightly harder. And I'll keep it as cos this time as well. So we'll go from here. That's 1 cycle. That's 2 cycles. And I think we'll just keep it at 2 cycles. So and let's make the value of this time 4 and minus 4, and this is 0. So we have to write down the equation for this graph. Well, what you've got to notice here is, I did say to you it's a cos graph, so we've got the clue, it's going to be y equals cos something. Well, cos normally starts at 1, and it's up here normally, so it's been stretched by a factor of 4, so it's 4 and minus 4, but the cos starts positive, but this one's starting at a negative 4, so that tells us it's been flipped to the x-axis, therefore it's minus 4 cos. And how many cycles do we have? 1, 2, so it's negative 4 cos 2x because it's been flipped. If it hadn't been flipped, it would have started up here, but it's been flipped over. Okay, that's probably the hardest one you can get when these things are flipped. Let's try and draw a sine graph that's been flipped, and we'll not put in a complete number of cycles. So let's try this one. Let's symbol sine starts here at 0, but we're going to flip it. So that's 1, and let's go to here. Yeah, about there. Let's see about there. Okay, and just extend that a wee bit, and we'll say that finishes at 360 there. Okay, so what's the graph for that? Oh, sorry, the equation for that. Well, the equation for that, let's put some values in here. Let's put, I don't know, 8 and minus 8 here. So I'm telling you it's a sine graph, so it's y equals something sine, and we have to count the number of cycles. So let's look at it. Well, it goes between 8 and minus 8, but it should be going up the way. A normal sine graph goes up the way first, but we can see, or hopefully you can see, it's been flipped in the x-axis, so that will be minus 8. So rather than going up this way, it's actually come that way, so it's been flipped. And how many cycles do we have? Well, let's start here. Well, that's 1, and then we've got another half a cycle. So we've got 1.5 cycles. Well, that's the same as the fraction 3 over 2 x. So that's the value for that. Okay, and that's what you have to do for these things. Now, I think that's quite straightforward and quite easy. I won't do any more of them. The tan function, it's the same thing for the tan function. Now let's go the other way now. So what we're doing there is we're given a graph and we're trying to find the equation. Well, in the exam, we could ask it the other way around. We could give you the equation and you have to draw the graph. Now when you draw the graph, you have to put in key points into it. So we'll show you how to go about that. And again, I'll just make them up as we go along. Right, let's go for y equals 2 sine 3x. So given that in the exam, they ask you to sketch it. So how would we go about that? Well, we can do it freehand. We're not looking for absolute accuracy when we ask for a sketch. what we're looking for is just the key points and key features. So the amplitude, number of cycles, and some scale on the x-axis. So the best way to do this, in my opinion, is to look at the number of cycles first. We need 3 cycles, so it's sine, so we have to draw 3 cycles. Well, there's one. I'll try and make them all roughly the same. 2, 3. So I have to extend that a wee bit. And that would be 360, because the 3 tells us how many cycles we have in 360. And 2 is the amplitude, so that tells us how high it goes to. It goes to 2 and goes to -2. Now we could put a wee bit more detail in this. 1 cycle then would be, to work out the period, that would be 360 divided by 3, which is 120. So I think we could put that in it, and our cycle would be 240, and half of that would be 60. So I think all these things are not too hard to put in. That'd be 180 at that point there, and this one here, another 60 on that, would be 300. Okay, and that's what you would expect for a sketch at National 5 level. Let's try a cost graph this time. So again, I'm just going to do it totally freehand here, just to save a wee bit of time. Let's go for y equals 3 cos 2x. So you're asked to draw that. Well, the way we go about that, draw a reasonable axis. So there's a reasonable axis, and it starts at 0 there. And again, the 2 tells us 2 cycles, so let's go 1, 2. Okay, not the best, but it's reasonable. So cos usually starts at 1, but the amplitude is now 3, so we need 3 there, and we need -3 here, and we had 2 cycles because of that, so 1 cycle to here, so that would be 180 degrees, and I think that's reasonable. We could put in, if that's 180, this would be 90, so we could do that, and this would be 270 in here, because we've got 2 cycles within that. Okay. Right, let's try one now where it's flipped. So you'd be a wee bit unlucky to get this in the exam, but let's go for minus sine 4x. Minus sine 4x. So I'm asked to sketch it. So here's 4 axis. There's 0. Now the minus tells me it's been flipped, but the amplitude is still 1, so it's minus 1 sine 4x. So minus 1 here, 1 up here, and we need 4 cycles, so this is going to be quite tight, so let's try and get that right. But that'd be 1, 2, that was 3, 4. Okay, so that'd be 360 degrees here. We've got 4 there, let's see, 1, 2, 3, yeah, we've got 4 there, and it'd be minus 1 and 1, and it's been flipped. So 4 cycles, so 1 cycle would be 90 degrees, 2 cycles would be 180, 3 cycles would be 270, to that. So we'd expect something like that. Okay, right, I'll do one more. Let's go for another cos one this time. Let's go for y equals 10 cos 3x. So sketching that. Put our axis in. We need 3 cycles. So let's go for 3 cycles first. That's That's 1 cos, 2 cosses, 3 cosses. That's 360 degrees there. So 1 cycle is 120, 2 cycles 240, and there's 0 there, and our amplitude is 10, so that's going to be 10 and minus 10. Okay, yeah, I think I've done enough of that. So this video was all about looking at a graph and writing down the equation, or writing down the equation and drawing the graph. That's the 2 options they have for you at National 5. And remember, tan can be involved in it, but very, very rare that tan ever comes up. It's usually sine and cos that comes up a lot. And the hardest ones is when it's flipped. So sometimes they're flipped, so you've got to be careful of that if that one comes up. Okay, the next video I'll do is when we tag something on at the end here. Okay, and see what effect that has on the graph. But that will be in the next video.